It was so hard. Things went wrong. I overcame them, and I feel like I really earned my Ironman title in a really badass way, and I'm so proud of that.
Welcome to the Fall and Rise podcast. Today we are joined by Emma. Welcome back to the Fall and Rise, Emma. How have you
Yeah,
been?
I've been good. Thank you, guys. It's good to be back.
So, Emma, we last spoke to you 4 months ago, just before you were starting your training block for the Ironman World Championships. You completed that race last 2 weeks ago. Talk us through that race.
Yeah, look, I might even start around the training block, to be honest, because it's pretty brutal. So I guess from where we left off, I'd just finished my Ironman training and my Ironman race at Port Macquarie. The swim was cancelled, unfortunately. So I was still on that endeavour to become an Ironman, and I somehow qualified for Kona, which is a miracle. And then I was straight back into Ironman training. So, as someone who's a bit of a noob to this sport, I've really only just started I've been doing this for 2 years, and these were my first Ironmans. To do back to back Ironman training, one after another, is pretty intense. Don't 100% recommend that idea because it's pretty grueling. I also trained for Kona during Australian winter. So I didn't really consider this when I, on a whim, just signed up for this race, that I would be having to do some really strange heat training in a hazmat suit on a bike indoors, trying to boost my core temperature so that I could be ready for the conditions in Kona. So the training was different. The training was really hard. I have never actually cycled through an Australian winter. And I know, speaking to people like yourselves who have a much harsher winter, this probably sounds really pathetic, but it's awful cycling in the winter. Like, I hate the cold. I didn't even have any winter gear. So it was a huge lesson for me in what I had to do. And so the training was actually really difficult for this race, is what I'm trying to say. The time we got to race day, we'd already felt pretty beaten up. Well, I had anyway. And so anyway, it was time to do the actual race. I went over to Kona on the 1st of October, so to give myself a good amount of time to get acclimatized to the heat and to also do a little bit of training in Kona, because there were like things about it that, felt a bit weird, like riding on the other side of the road and just sort of getting your bearings of what is going on here and what the temperature was actually going to feel like. And wow, it's so hot. So hot. And just a different kind of heat, I guess. So in Australia, it gets really hot here, but it's more of a dry heat, very humid and just super unforgiving in Kona because there's no trees. You're just out there on the highway in the lava fields. So anyway, it was going to be what it was going to be, right? And I was there. The event itself, like, even just being there for those 2 weeks, being in Kona, the professionals were all there. We saw them. At one point we were out training with Taylor Nibb. She was just out there doing a run. She was getting lactate testing while we were out, like, doing our run as well. And it was surreal, right? And I thought, wow, how can I be here doing this with all of these people? And it was just so incredible. Just even the lead up, we had a practice swim, which was really beautiful, with the pros are out there as well, where we got to have a bit of a crack at the swim course. There was like a fun run that they held in town, and the whole town just gets behind it, and it just turns into it's the most. I thought my other Ironman was amazing, but this was just something else, and it was just magic. And I could the whole time I could just feel myself getting like super emotional about it, and it was becoming a thing, and I had to really sort of keep that under control. But race morning came. The way that they did it was that the pros went out and then they had age groups just sort of rolling at different times. And my age group, 35 to 39, happened to be the first age group to go after the pros. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. But it meant that I had to be down there really early. So my start time was 6:40, which I thought was good. I was like, great, I'm going to start early. Hopefully that can mean that I can get through the heat of the day on the bike and maybe this won't be so bad or whatever. But we got down there and I was just overcome with emotion, to be honest. It was just the most amazing thing, even just walking into that environment. You walk into transition, and if you're not super familiar with triathlon, on race morning, you go in and you kind of get your bike set up and you put your nutrition on your bike and just make sure everything's kind of ready to go. And normally that's like just a very sort of solo mission. But as we walked through, the aisleways were just lined with volunteers who were all just congratulating us and wishing us well, and it was and just hyping us up. And honestly, I could just feel myself about to cry the whole time. And I was like, just keep it together. Like, you haven't even started. Like, chill out. Anyway, I sorted out my bike and then I went to go drop my bag in, to, like we have like a closed bag that you just sort of hand off. And then I realized I had my bike computer still in my hand, which is not ideal. And the transition area had closed. So I had to like leg it back into transition. And they were like, no, 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 you can't come in here anymore. And I was like, I still have my bike computer. So like, fortunately, someone let me in and I was able to fix it. Then the American national anthem started to play. And like, I'm not like, not American or I'm not patriotic or like, I don't know, like I'm not any of these things, but I just burst out crying. I don't know why. Like, I think it was all just becoming like a thing. And then these two girls, like one found me. So a girl just found me and said, hey, I know you from Instagram. You're going to be okay. And I was like, and then another one found me and then there were three of us and they're all just hyping me up. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling better now. But then I looked over and there's my swim wave. They'd all corralled a long time ago and they were all actually starting to walk to the swim start and I wasn't in the wave. And so I realized I had made some timing errors. So here I am in my swimsuit, in my swim skin, crying, now jumping a fence, trying to get into the wave to start on time. I was like, why didn't I read any of the information about what I was supposed to be doing? I just feel like I just stuffed it up from the beginning. And then, so I'm in there and I got in and I was like, thank God. And they'd kind of stopped us. And I saw this girl and she had this little packet of like chafe butter. Like it was like this tiny little packet that she was just rubbing on herself. And I realized I hadn't put any anti-chafe around my neck. And I thought, this is now going to affect me for the entire race. And I was like, God damn it. And then I just looked at her little packet and I was like, should I ask her for some or like what should I do? And so I just waited for her to finish it. She threw it on the ground. I then like absolute scab like picked it up off the ground then was using like the dregs. And I was like, okay, well that's gross, but I'm just doing this. And I felt better for it and I didn't get any neck chafe. But anyway, after all of that fiasco, I finally made it into the water. We swim out. So the difference with Kona and a normal Ironman like or race is normal Ironmans, you kind of go in these sort of rolling starts where they blow a horn and three people kind of run in and they keep sort of letting you run in and they let it go gradually. At Kona, it's a mass start. So your whole age group is in the water together and you all just go at the same time. So luckily I've done a few mass starts in different swimming events. That wasn't too scary for me. And because we were the wave straight after the pros, it was just packed. So it was the most amazing thing. I'm out there, like you swim a couple 100 meters out of the water and you're out in this bay and there's just thousands of people watching. And then you've got people on paddle boards and boogie boards creating this line in front of you that you can't cross. And it was just sick. And then at that moment I was like, yeah, this is actually really cool. And I was getting really excited. And then the horn blew. And so I just went for it. And there was someone in front of me and they went for it. Immediately kicked in the face pretty significantly, enough that it moved my goggle and that one of my goggles was completely now full of water. I was like, oh, this is bad. And it was the side that I breathe on. So it meant that every time I'd turn my head, salt water is just running over my eye. And so it's very painful. And so I had to make a decision. I've got 3.8 kilometers to swim. Can't do it like this. So for a minute, I did some backstroke and I tried to get as much water out as possible. But I think the goggles are a bit stuffed and it was just leaking. And because I was closing my eye, when you close your eye with a goggle, like it does actually start to bring water into the goggle. So I had to swim the entire swim with one eye and another eye just being really stung. And I'll put a picture on Instagram of me coming out of the swim, which is like super dramatic. And you can just see my whole eye is just swollen and black, like from just being hit. And so that is basically how I started my race, just with one eye. I then went into transition. So it took me, I think, an hour and 20 minutes to do the swim, which was okay. The conditions were really rough. It was not a nice swim, and it sounds like everyone had a bit of a struggle there. So I was pretty happy with that time, to be honest, given the scenario. Got out on my bike, and immediately I could tell something was kind of wrong with my bike. Like, I was like, what's happening here? Like, I could see my power was high, but I was going pretty slow, and I was like, I feel like I have two flat tires. And earlier, when I came into transition in the morning, you normally in triathlon, you normally take your own pump, and you can pump it and you can then leave your pump somewhere. I didn't read the instructions. I really needed to. You're not allowed to take your own pump to World Championships. They have pumps for you. And so my pump got confiscated. The pump I used, it was kind of all foggy in the dial, like to see what the gauge was. And what I learned, because I had to stop and repump up my tires, is that I'd only pumped my tires up to about 60 psi when they should have been at about 80. So I was basically running with pretty flat tires. So that was kind of the start of my race. I've never collected a hydration bottle from an aid station before on my bike. So that is just not a skill I've ever done. I've always just carried my own water, and I've had enough. And so a couple of days before the race, I had my friend help me, and I did a few drink bottle passes, and I was like, okay, I think I've got this. And my God, I'm so thankful that I did, because I had just had to use every aid station. And essentially what I was having to do was every aid station, I would get a bottle, I would dump it over my head because it was so hot. And then I'd get another bottle at the same aid station and then try to drink that. And I was doing a bit of a mix of whatever I could get, basically. It was either a water, or they had a hydration drink on course. And if that was the bottle I could get as the second one, that's what I'd get. I learned that that was a bit of a mistake, right? Because, people who do endurance sports, you train with your nutrition. And so you kind of get used to the things that you get used to. And I'd never drunk this drink that was on course before, but it seemed harmless. Like, it seemed like it was just a Gatorade. But man, did I have some pretty brutal stomach issues on this bike ride. And I've never had stomach issues on a bike ride before, ever. And so I think it must have been a mix between the heat, because that always sort of can upset your stomach. Maybe I was overdoing it a little bit on the carbs, but I do think maybe this new drink that entered the chat might have had something to do with it. But I actually had to have like a proper bathroom stop, which never ever have I ever had to do that on the bike. So let me give you the picture. Imagine a portaloo on the middle of the Queen K highway in the middle of nowhere, like out in the blazing sun. It's like a furnace in there, and you're in this tiny tri-suit, like spandex. Just think about like the situation of A, having to deal with being in there, then B, trying to put your tri-suit back on when you are like sweating profusely in the world's most disgusting sauna you have ever seen. So it was rough, super rough. And it took me a while, and so that was just a bit of a tough part on my bike leg. But I just took it pretty easy, to be honest. I struggled. The heat got me. I think my average heart rate on that ride was in the 120s. So like, I really wasn't pushing. I just had, and my power was low. My power target was about 170. And I was pushing, I think, around 140. Like, that's all I had. And I just had to stay with it. My eye was really sore from the swim, so I couldn't look forward a lot. I had to just keep looking down and kind of glancing up, and that was kind of making me a bit dizzy, and just had to kind of keep my wits about me, to be honest. With 2 kilometers to go, I was excited because we were coming back into town. I was like, yeah, and there was a girl about 20 meters in front of me, and I don't know if she passed out on the bike or if she just had like a mental lapse and had an accident, but absolutely worst crash I've ever seen. She's just completely knocked out, and honestly, my heart just sunk for her. Like, after riding 180 kilometers, being less than 2Ks from the bike transition, to have an accident like that is just absolutely brutal. And it kind of woke me up, to be honest. And she had a lot of support. A lot of people were going to help her, but you really, you can just lose it at any point. So it's quite scary. I made it to transition, and then you run in. So you rack your bike and then you run into a changing area. And let me tell you, it was pandemonium in this changing room. There were naked people, there were people throwing wet towels at you. Like it was just out of control. Like it was just so much going on. I did my best to just do this quickly because I can get a bit like, I don't know, the last one, I kind of dawdled a little bit in transition, so I wanted to do it a bit faster this time, and I got out of there pretty quick. The moment we got on that run, I can't even explain to you. It was like hitting a wall of fire. It was so hot. It's just something about the humidity, and you run out and immediately you run straight into a hill. So that's as you're coming out of transition, it's just into a hill with thousands of people on it. So just staring at you. So you've got to keep it together for that hill and try to look okay. But then you just sort of like, well, for me, I don't know how other people felt, but I was just like, how the hell am I going to run a marathon in this? Like, I want to walk already. I've run 500 meters and I want to walk. Like, how are we going to do this? And it just became a game of, every aid station, ice in the hat, ice in the tri suit, ice everywhere, drinking, doing everything you could. And I got through the first 10 Ks, which is along Alihi Drive. And that's kind of the most iconic part of it's one of the iconic parts of the runs that has a lot of spectators. So that really helps you, like, A, you don't want to be that guy who's walking when people are looking. And, B, you've got the crowd kind of behind you. And so that kind of buoys you to run a bit more. But then you go up this hill and onto a highway, the Queen K, and it is just, there's no one up there. There's some aid stations, but it's just you on this really long highway in the blistering heat. And it was really hard. It's the hardest running I've ever done. My legs felt strong, but it was just the heat and the conditions just made it so, so difficult. So I started having to play games. And so it was like, I'll try and run to each aid station. But then, and the aid stations were only like 3 kilometers apart, right? So they're not far. But even that was becoming too difficult. So then I was having to go, okay, well, now I'm just going to pick this landmark and I just need to run to that and then I can give myself a rest. Or I would say, I'd look at my watch and I'd be like, okay, now I'm going to run a really strong kilometer. And so then I'd set myself like a pace for 1 kilometer. And once I got there, I could be a little bit proud. And I was just trying to do lots of things to try and boost my mood, and it was kind of working. I was starting to get some funny stomach pain, but I was able to I was just like, you probably had a bit too much Coke or, things aren't great, but just keep going. There's a section of the course called the Energy Lab, and it's probably the most soul destroying part. Like it is just desolate and you run sort of into this just barren wasteland and it's really hot. There's not much going on there. There's no trees, nothing. Like it's a tough zone to be in, and it's probably the hottest part of the course. And when I got in there, I was about at the half marathon stage, and I looked down to play my next watch game, and my watch had died, and I died a little bit because it was my only thing that was keeping this together, that watch. The games that I was playing was all I had at that point. And then I just was like, I have no idea how long this Ironman is taking me. I'd lost all concept of time and reality. And I then just was completely alone. And that's when like I started to be able to feel everything. So I was having this really sort of bad, it's kind of like kidney pain. And if I can sort of describe it without being too TMI, it was kind of like, you really need to, do a pee or something and you just can't, like having like a UTI, like it was just very painful and it was really, really making it difficult for me to run. And there was just nothing I could do to resolve that. And I knew that something was actually probably kind of wrong with me at this point. And, but I had to keep going. Because I didn't have the watch, I couldn't I'd lost sort of track of how much I was walking or how much I was running, and I could tell I was very dehydrated, and I was starting to get, like, a bit lost in the situation. So sometimes I'd sort of wake myself out of it and go, "You've been walking for too long, you gotta start running again," and it, like, I was just a bit confused, and it felt like it went on for hours, and then I started really beating myself up. So I got out of the energy lab and I was back on the highway, sort of coming back towards, the finish line. Still had about 18 kilometers to go at this point. And then I started feeling really bad for all the people who were waiting for me at the finish line. I thought that I'd been out there for hours and hours and hours. I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to make the cutoff anymore. Like, I was like, this is like a 17-hour Ironman. And I was like, what? These poor people, like, that, like, my friends are waiting for me. This is so bad. And I started getting really sad. Like, I was like, this is awful. And then two things happened. I ran past an aid station and there was a sign on the aid station that just said, soak it in, you'll never do it again. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of right. Like, don't feel bad about people waiting for you. Like, this is your race. Just do it. Like, it's fine. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I kind of got it back together. And then, look, I must have looked upset, I think, because as I was running, a police officer that was doing like traffic control just said, hey, you have plenty of time. Don't stress it. And I was just like, oh, okay. I feel good now. And so then I just sort of got back into some sort of rhythm. Still in a lot of pain, but I was sort of able to get through it. But then, like, when you're coming back, there's a set of traffic lights that you turn down that sort of is signaling that you're going back into like the main area of Kona, and that's where the finish line is. And it's almost like as you're running, there's all these traffic lights appear, and you're like, there they are. And you get to them, and that's not them. And then another set appear, and you're like, oh, there they are. I made it. And then it's not them. It's like these traffic lights are just mirages the whole way. It's just like, where are the traffic lights that I need to turn down? Because it's like, this is going on forever. Eventually I got there. It started raining as I got there. And then you run down a very dramatic, like, downhill. So in the rain, trying not to slip in my pretty slippy carbon shoes, downhill, you've got about 2 kilometers to go. I had all these plans. I had like an ugly hydration belt on and a hat that didn't really go with my nice tri suit, but it was fun, so I wanted to wear it. But I thought for my finish line, I wanted to get a really nice photo. So I had this plan in my head that I was going to like ditch my nerd belt, like my hydration belt, and I was going to take my hat off and just redo my ponytail while I was running. Like, 'cause I felt like I could do that. I know this is really stupid. But by the time I got to this, like, as I was coming out, there was just no chance I was doing anything. I had zero cares for that anymore. And so then I just went for it, and I just wanted to get to the finish line. And then the moment I got to the finish line, like, I just couldn't. I was just so overcome. The streets were completely lined with just hundreds and hundreds of people, and people were just shouting my name. Like, they could just see it on my bib, and it was just so loud, and it was amazing. And I got to that finish line and I just burst out crying. Like, I was just so overcome with emotion. My friends they were at the other side of the finish line and they were shouting my name. I've got this video of them just shouting my name, trying to get my attention. I just couldn't even hear them. I was just in my own world, really. And yeah, then I was kind of whisked away into the recovery area, and I hadn't even looked at my time. I thought that I'd done it like 16 hours. It felt like I'd been out there for an eternity, and I knew that it was a disappointing time, but I was so proud that I'd finished. And I was like, and I still kind of felt bad for my people. So I rushed through the recovery area so that I could get out and they could go home, because one of my friends was also competing and I knew she'd finished hours and hours ago. So I knew she'd probably want to go home. Anyway, I got out there and they were all really pumped for me, and they're like, you did such a great job. And I said, oh, no, I know it was really rough. It was much harder than I thought. And then one of them told me my finish time. And I was expecting to kind of finish in about 14 hours. And I did it in 13 hours and 20 minutes, which is not so bad for me. Like, that's pretty good. And I was like, oh, great. And so actually I did a PB on the bike and I ran my marathon 13 minutes faster than I did at Port Macquarie. I was like, they're feeling really bad about my time, but actually I kind of did all right. And yeah, that really turned me around. I was like, great. But yeah, then when I got home, I definitely had some pretty significant signs of dehydration. There was a moment where we weren't sure if we should go to hospital or not, because it was, yeah, like that race had definitely taken its toll on me. But yeah, I got some doctor's advice and I was able to sort of work through some of my symptoms. But yeah, it was so hard. Things went wrong. I overcame them, and I feel like I really earned my Ironman title in a really badass way, and I'm so proud of that. So yeah, I'm an Ironman now and I did it in the best way possible.
What would you say is your key takeaway, whether that be a lesson learned or a moment from that race that you're just going to hold with you as you move forward in, I suppose, your Ironman career or just in life in general?
Yeah, I'd say that it's just being able to overcome. I think, if I look back at the only part I was disappointed about, it's that I did start to beat myself up about my time. I didn't even know what my time was. Why did I even care? I was doing something so incredible. And I posted something about this today because I've had quite a few comments about my time. I don't know, people seem to expect me to do like this race really fast. I think maybe I fake it till I make it a little bit too good and they think I'm a bit pro, but I'm not. I'm very much an amateur. And like I think, to finish something like this is such an achievement, and to do the training and to stick with something is such an achievement, and we should never take away from that. Even there are always going to be people who do it faster, right? But you should just accept your race and be incredibly proud of it. And I am now, like, and I wish I didn't have that little slumpy moment where I wasn't. And I guess I also my other takeaway more practically would be to read the guides and like know where you're supposed to be. Like I made it so stressful for myself just because I was underprepared. I had months to figure this out. Like, what was I doing? Like, yeah.
How would you say that your support crew, them being there, how did that help you on race day?
You don't even know. So, like, originally, I wasn't going to have anyone there with me. My husband couldn't come, and myself and another athlete were just going to go. And so we were just going to go together. We were both racing, and so we wouldn't have had anybody there for us in this moment. We ended up, two of my friends flew over, which I can't even put it into words how incredible that is, that the two of them flew over for 4 days. Okay. So they flew over from Australia. It's like 12 hours to spend 4 days. One of them standing on the side of the road for like 15 hours, like, and then to fly home to do like, it's so much. But without them, it wouldn't have been the same. And I can tell you right now that there were moments that were really lonely, and then they were there and it made such a difference. And even to my friend Rachel, who was also racing, she didn't have anyone there for her, but my friend scooped her. And there's a moment in her finish line video where like my friend just gives her like the biggest hug. And I know that if that didn't happen, it probably wouldn't have felt the same. And so, like I think shout outs to anybody who is one of those people who is an ultimate support crew, because it's hard to be that person on the sideline. Like it really is, but it means so much to have people in your corner. And not only that, we actually had someone with us, James, from Gym Media, to help us sort of capture this. I share it very publicly on Instagram, and we did have some people sort of help sponsor our way through to this trip. So we wanted to be able to share it in a good way, both for our brands and then also for the people who were behind this journey. So he did us a bit of a solid and came over and stayed with us. We didn't know him. He's a 25-year-old guy who's, into like starting up a media business, but also loves triathlon. And he just made it, right? Like he then became just part of our crew. And honestly, he ran with me for most of Alehi Drive. Well, he had a bike and he was filming, but he was also just chatting with me and just cheering me on. And our trip wouldn't have been the same without him either. And we didn't even know him, but he became like such an integral part. And by the end of it, he's our mate now. And that's really the part that I won't forget is the three of them. So Blake, Carly and James, who just got behind us and they did. They really made it for us.
You've completed your goal,
Mm,
and it's incredible. Your whole journey has sort of, in some respects, led to this moment, and you've
yeah.
done it.
Yeah.
Where do you go from here?
It's weird, isn't it? Because I even wonder, do I have to change my Instagram handle now? Because I'm no longer, it's not M's to Iron Man. I am the Iron Man. Like, am I just M's now, or what do I do? But anyway, that's to solve in another day. But it has been funny. Like, I was like, well, what do I do from here? But I actually have an idea. And what I am going to do is I've had a pretty rough road to Ironman, and with a lot of things that didn't go right. So my first marathon was really difficult. It was my first ever endurance event. I really struggled. I ended up with like an Achilles tendinopathy and big injuries. So it kind of sort of really derailed me for a long time. And so there were a lot of lessons learned, and I know that I could do it better. My first half distance Ironman, I completed that with a broken leg because I trained in a really poor way. And then that also like really crippled me for ages. And then my first Ironman, the swim was cancelled. So that wasn't great either. So actually what I'm going to do is 2026 for me is going to be the year of redoing. I'm going to do a half distance Ironman, and I'm going to do it without a broken leg, and I'm really going to go for it. I was lucky enough because I did Sydney Marathon in 2023 that I got a pre-ballot entry into Sydney Marathon this year. They gave me one. So I'm going to go for a performance goal in the Sydney Marathon, and I want to be able to do that under 4 hours, which would be a huge achievement for me, and that is a stretch goal. And then I'm going to do Ironman Australia at Port Macquarie next year in October, and the swim won't be cancelled this time. But I'm also putting a performance goal on that one, and I'm going to really push myself to try and do it in under 12 hours. So that'd be big for me. So yeah, that's it's going to be the year of redos, and my coach is on board with that. It's going to be fun. Yeah.
What lessons are you going to take from your training block this time round into your next goals?
Yeah, so look, I've learnt so much since starting all of this. I think I've learnt that less can be more, and that you really have to listen to your body. And that it's okay to adapt your training. So I think from this last training block, I got really hard on myself about not riding outside more. I really thought I was being a wuss, and that I was giving in to the uncomfortable, and it really affected me from a confidence perspective. I was like, if I can't hack this, how am I going to hack Kona? And it was really bad. And I was doing heaps of my rides on the trainer, but actually it's okay. Like, sometimes you don't have to be suffering. I think, like that was kind of my lesson, is that it was okay that I did a lot of rides on the trainer. It's winter. Don't suffer. You don't have to suffer. You can still get the adaptations from the trainer. Like, just maybe don't beat yourself up so much. But I think the thing that I'm excited to learn is that all of my races so far have been about finishing. Every single one of them, because they've all been unknowns, right? And so I've raced with a bit of not fear, but just apprehension and just hesitation to say, like, as particularly in the bike leg, for example. Like, as I said to you before, my heart rate was in the one is very low zone 2. I definitely had more to push, but I was so scared of the run and scared of making it that I didn't want to. I want to leave it all out on the table. That's why I'm putting some like hard performance goals for me out there, because I'm not afraid to DNF these ones. Like, I want to find the line. And so I think that's going to be exciting too, because I haven't trained like that before either. I haven't trained to a point of that's as hard as I can go. So yeah, I think there'll be so much more learning that I can even do in this next section. I don't know, it just keeps going. Right?
When we spoke to you initially, it was about 4 months prior to your Ironman. What would you say from then being at the start of your block leading up to Kona to now having completed Kona? How has your mindset changed?
I think I was really unsure, to be honest. I really didn't know if I could do it. And even up to the day beforehand, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but like I was almost starting to prepare my I couldn't do it speech, and like explain how I couldn't do it or why. Like it was a lot of that sort of thinking. But I think after actually going through that and doing it, I have so much faith in that if I trust the process, and I, and do what's required, I can absolutely do it. And even if I go in a little bit underbaked, I've got the mental fortitude to be able to push through. And so I think that's why now I can go into these other things and go, yeah, I'm a baddie, and I'm going to redline this and just see what happens. I don't know. Yeah, there's confidence.
Emma, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your journey with us and your story. Yeah, it's just been great to hear what you're up to and what you've done. And I guess we just look forward to having you on again in times you achieve your next feat.
It was so hard, things went wrong. I overcame them, and I feel like I really earned my Ironman title in a really badass way, and I'm so proud of that.